Nia stopped breathing. The air in the penthouse office was freezing. It smelled of expensive leather and absolute danger. She pressed her back against the mahogany desk until the wood dug into her spine. There was nowhere left to run. Slam. A hand hit the wall right next to her head. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Nia looked up. She saw him. Han Si-woo. The heir to the Han Empire. The man they called the Viper. He did not look like a monster. He looked perfect. His suit was sharp black silk. His hair was styled with precision. But his eyes were dead cold. He leaned into her personal space. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. She clutched the stolen manila folder tighter to her chest. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Si-woo tilted his head. A cruel, arrogant smirk played on his lips. He looked at her like a wolf looks at a rabbit. "Did you really think you could steal from the devil and walk out the front door?" he whispered. His voice was smooth like velvet but sharp like a razor. "You aren't leaving this room until I say so." Nia tried to speak. Her throat was dry. This was not part of the plan. The intel said he would be out of the city. The intel was wrong. It was a trap. He reached out. His fingers brushed the edge of the mask covering her face. "Let's see who is foolish enough to die tonight. Welcome back to the dark streets of Seoul. You thought the story ended with the monster. You were wrong. The Han Empire is crumbling. After the old director was destroyed, a power vacuum opened up in the underworld. Now a new predator has returned from America to claim the throne. They say the father was a brute. But the son is something much worse. Han Si-woo does not use fists to crush his enemies. He uses secrets. He uses blackmail. He is a viper waiting in the tall grass. He is calculated, cold, and completely ruthless. And tonight, he just caught his first prey. Get ready. This is not a fairy tale. This is a game of survival. In the world of the Korean Mafia, if you get caught, you don't go to jail. You belong to him. 2 hours earlier, Nia had not been trembling. 2 hours earlier, she had been a ghost. Standing on the roof of the adjacent skyscraper, the wind whipping through her curly hair, she checked her watch. 1:58 a.m. Shift change for the private security detail at the Han Tower. She had exactly 90 seconds to make her move. Nia was not a maid, and she wasn't a desperate girl looking for a handout. By day, she was a senior forensic auditor for one of the top financial firms in Seoul. She spent her mornings wearing pencil skirts and thick glasses, smiling politely at corrupt executives while she traced their embezzled funds through shell companies. But by night, she was something far more expensive. She was the one you hired when you didn't just want to find the dirt, you wanted to steal it. She adjusted the strap of her tactical bag and rappelled down the maintenance shaft, landing silently on the balcony of the 50th floor. The glass door in front of her was bulletproof and alarmed. To an amateur, it was a wall. To Nia, it was a puzzle. She pulled a thin, tablet-like device from her jacket. She didn't need to break the glass, she just needed to trick it. She clamped a sensor over the locking mechanism. On her screen, lines of code cascaded like green rain. "Come on," she whispered, her eyes scanning the readout. "Talk to me." Click. The lock disengaged with a soft, satisfying thud. Nia slipped inside, moving like smoke. She tapped her earpiece to check the camera feed. She had already looped the hallway surveillance footage 10 minutes ago. On the security screens downstairs, the guards were watching an empty hallway. In reality, Nia was walking right down the center of the plush carpet, heading straight for the double doors at the end. The CEO's office. The inner sanctum of the Han family. She pushed the doors open and paused. The room was massive, dominated by a desk that cost more than her entire education. But she wasn't here for the furniture. She moved straight to the abstract painting on the far wall. Her intel was solid. She ran her gloved fingers along the frame until she found the hidden latch. The painting swung forward, revealing a heavy steel safe. "Too easy," she murmured, attaching a digital stethoscope to the dial. It took her less than 3 minutes to find the combination. The heavy door groaned open, revealing stacks of cash, gold bars, and a single, thick black folder. The black ledger. The rumored record of every bribe, every hit, and every illegal deal the Han family had made in the last decade. It was the smoking gun her client had paid $500,000 for. Nia grabbed the folder, her heart doing a victory lap. She shoved it into her jacket and turned on her heel, a triumphant smile on her lips. She had done it. She had robbed the most dangerous family in Korea, and they wouldn't even know she was there until morning. She reached for the door handle to leave. Click. The sound was mechanical and loud in the silence. The handle didn't move. Nia frowned and tried again. Locked. A cold feeling washed over her, starting at the base of her spine. She spun around to check the window, but heavy steel shutters suddenly slammed down over the glass, sealing the exit. "No," she whispered, her mind racing. "That's impossible. I looped the system." Then, the lights flickered. Every floodlight in the office blazed to life at once, blinding her with sudden, clinical brightness. Nia threw her arm up to shield her eyes, backing away instinctively. She froze. The security system hadn't glitched. She hadn't tripped a silent alarm. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. The biometric lock hadn't opened because she hacked it. It had opened because someone unlocked it from the inside. She didn't break in. She had been invited. From the shadows of the private elevator in the corner, a slow, rhythmic clapping echoed through the room. "Impressive," a deep voice said. "You beat the cameras. You beat the locks. You even cracked the safe." Nia lowered her arm, her breath hitching in her throat as Han Si-woo stepped into the light. He wasn't surprised. He was waiting. "But you really should have asked yourself," he continued, walking toward her with a predatory grace, "why the motion sensors were already off when you walked in." The silence in the room was heavier than the steel shutters blocking the windows. Han Si-woo stepped back, finally giving Nia room to breathe, but the air still felt thin. He didn't scream. He didn't call for his guards. Instead, he began to circle her, his footsteps making no sound on the thick carpet. He moved like a shark in deep water, patient, lethal, and completely in control. "You're trembling," he observed, his voice low. "But you're not crying. Most people are on their knees by now." Nia forced her spine to straighten, pushing down the primal urge to run. She was an auditor, a professional. She dealt with numbers, facts, and logic. Panic was a variable she couldn't afford. She adjusted the lapel of her leather jacket, meeting his gaze with a defiance that made him pause. "I don't beg," Nia said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. "And if you're going to kill me, you would have done it when I walked through the door. You watched me for 10 minutes. You wanted something." Si-woo stopped circling. He tilted his head, a flicker of genuine curiosity breaking through his cold mask. "I wanted to see if you were as good as my security chief claimed. You bypassed the biometrics in under 60 seconds. Not bad." "Your biometrics are fine," Nia countered, taking a risky step forward. She wasn't just a victim, she was an expert, and she needed him to know she had value. But your secondary motion sensors on the north wall have a 3-second lag. And your thermal imaging is calibrated too high, it missed my heat signature because I'm wearing insulated lining. You have holes in your fortress, Mr. Han. For a second, the room was deadly silent. Siwoo stared at her, his dark eyes narrowing. He wasn't used to his captives giving him a performance review. A slow, chilling smile spread across his face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had just found a new toy. Smart, he murmured, stepping closer again until the scent of his expensive cologne, sandalwood and ice, filled her senses. You're very smart. That's unfortunate. He reached into his pocket. Nia flinched, expecting a weapon, but he only pulled out a sleek, black smartphone. He tapped the screen once and turned it toward her. Nia's blood turned to ice. It was a live video feed. But it wasn't of this office. It was a view from a street camera, zoomed in on a small, familiar apartment complex in the suburbs. A young woman with braids was walking up the steps, carrying grocery bags. She was laughing, talking on her phone, completely unaware that she was being watched by the most dangerous man in Seoul. Maya, Nia whispered, the name slipping out before she could stop it. Her sister. She works late at the clinic, doesn't she? Siwoo asked casually, as if they were discussing the weather. It's a dangerous neighborhood. Accidents happen all the time. A car jumps the curb, a gas leak, a random robbery. The defiance drained out of Nia instantly. She felt sick. He didn't just have her trapped in a room, he had her entire world in his hand. Don't, she choked out, her professionalism shattering. She has nothing to do with this. That depends on you, Siwoo said, slipping the phone back into his pocket. He reached out and plucked the manila folder from her numbness fingers. She didn't fight him this time. He walked over to a metal waste bin near his desk. He held the folder up, the black ledger she had risked her life for, and flicked a silver lighter open. You risked everything for this, he said, touching the flame to the paper. Nia watched in horror as the folder caught fire. The flames licked up the cardboard, consuming the evidence she had been hired to steal. It's fake, Siwoo said, dropping the burning documents into the bin and watching them turn to ash. The real ledger isn't in a safe. It's in my head. I just put that there to see who my enemies would send to come get it. He looked up at her through the rising smoke, his eyes dark and merciless. And now that I have you, he whispered, I think I'll keep you. The smoke curled up toward the ceiling, thick and acrid. Nia watched the last orange embers die in the wastebasket, her heart hammering as she searched for an exit that wasn't there. Han Siwoo didn't even glance at the burning folder. His eyes stayed locked on her as he moved, unhurried, deliberate, hoisting himself onto the edge of his desk like he had all the time in the world. He crossed one ankle over the other, and somehow the casual pose made him look even more dangerous. Two options, Nia. The way he said her name made her skin crawl. Like he'd already claimed it. Option A, I call the cops. You get arrested for corporate espionage, breaking and entering, attempted theft, the whole 9 yards. That's 10 years minimum. And prison. He tilted his head. Dangerous place. Accidents happen. Same way they happen to sisters walking home alone at night. Her nails bit into her palms. He knew exactly how to twist the knife. What's option B? Her voice came out strangled. You work for me. She stared at him. Work for you? Doing what? Your taxes. I literally just tried to steal from you. I have accountants. He waved a hand dismissively. I need something else. Someone else. He stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, gazing out at the city like he owned every building in it. Maybe he did. The board's been breathing down my neck. They think I'm unstable. Reckless. So they're trying to marry me off to some Choi family heiress to stabilize the company. He turned back, and his expression was ice. I need them to back off. I need a distraction big enough that they forget all about the merger. He pointed at her. That's you. Me. You. He said it like it was obvious. You're everything they can't stand. No family name. No connections. No polish. Just a broke girl with a criminal record hanging over her head. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. If I show up with you on my arm, the board will lose their minds trying to get rid of you. They'll forget all about the Choi girl. He closed the distance between them again, standing too close. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. 3 months, he said, voice low and sharp. You play my fiancée. Obsessed. Head over heels. You look at me like I hung the moon. You hang on my arm in public and have my back in private. And if I refuse? Then I make one phone call. His tone didn't change. And Maya doesn't make it home tonight. The words landed like a punch. Nia searched his face for any hint of a bluff, any crack in the mask. There was nothing. Just cold, ruthless certainty. Pack your stuff, he said, glancing at his watch. You're moving into the penthouse tonight. And Nia? He leaned in just enough that she could feel his breath. If you slip up, even once, you lose everything. If you were Nia, would you take the deal or risk running? Drop a like right now if you think she should gamble at all. The private elevator opened directly into the living room, and the air inside was even colder than the office. If the Han headquarters was a fortress, Han Siwoo's penthouse was a mausoleum. Everything was black marble, chrome, and glass. There were no photos, no personal clutter, and absolutely no warmth. It was beautiful, expensive, and completely dead. Your room is the second door on the left, Siwoo said, walking past her without a backward glance. He tossed his jacket onto a leather sofa that looked like it had never been sat on. Don't get comfortable. You are here to perform a function, not to play house. Nia gripped the strap of her tactical bag. She felt small in the cavernous space, but she refused to show it. And what are the rules of this function? Siwoo stopped at the wet bar and poured himself a glass of amber liquid. He didn't offer her any. Rule number 1, do not touch me unless there is an audience. Rule number 2, do not speak unless spoken to. And rule number 3, you are a prop. Do not mistake this proximity for intimacy. To me, you are just a piece of furniture that talks. He took a sip of the drink, his eyes scanning her outfit with disdain. And get rid of those clothes. You look like a burglar. If you're going to be my fiancée, you need to look the part. He gestured to a garment bag hanging near the hallway. Wear that. Nia walked over and unzipped the bag. Inside was a wine-colored evening gown. It was stunning, expensive, and clearly bought for someone else. A faint smell of heavy perfume clung to the fabric. This isn't new, Nia said, looking at him sharply. Whose is this? Does it matter? Siwoo asked, bored. Put it on. Nia zipped the bag back up with a harsh zip. No. Siwoo froze. He set his glass down slowly. Excuse me. I said no, Nia repeated, her voice steady. I agreed to be your fake fiancé to save my sister. I didn't agree to wear your ex-girlfriend's leftovers. I'm an auditor, Siwoo, not a doll. If you want me to sell this lie, I do it my way. She marched past him, ignoring the dangerous flash in his eyes, and went straight into his bedroom. She grabbed a crisp white dress shirt from his closet and pulled it on over her tank top. It was massive on her, swallowing her frame and hitting her mid-thigh, but it smelled like him, clean, sharp, and masculine. She rolled up the sleeves and walked back out, challenging him with a look. "Better?" she asked. Siwoo stared at her. The anger in his eyes wavered, replaced by something darker, something heated. The sight of her in his clothes did something to the air in the room. It made the fake intimacy feel suddenly, dangerously real. He opened his mouth to reprimand her, but a sharp ringtone cut through the silence. The color drained from Siwoo's face instantly. The arrogant prince vanished. He stared at his phone like it was a bomb. Nia watched as he answered it, putting it on speaker. "Director Kim," Siwoo said, his voice tight. "The vote is tomorrow, Siwoo," a cold, corporate voice slithered through the room. It wasn't his father, it was the head of the board, the man who had taken the throne after the monster died. "We are tired of your hesitation. Your father is dead. You have no protection anymore. I am the CEO," Siwoo grit out, his knuckles white. "You are a placeholder," Kim sneered. "Marry the Choi girl and secure our funding, or we remove you. And you know what happens to a Han who loses his power. You become a liability." The line clicked dead. Siwoo stood there, gripping the counter. He looked like he was about to shatter. Nia stood in the silence, realizing for the first time that the Viper wasn't the predator here. He was the prey. The next morning, the Han Corporation boardroom felt nothing like a place where business happened. It felt like a slaughterhouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows exposed Seoul's gray skyline, but the air inside was thick enough to choke on. 20 men in overpriced gray suits sat around a massive ebony table, watching Siwoo like vultures circling something half-dead. Nia sat just behind his right shoulder. She'd borrowed, stolen, a sharp black blazer from his personal stylist, and she looked like she belonged among these sharks. Her face gave nothing away, but her eyes were working overtime, cataloging every twitch and glare from the men who'd love to see Siwoo buried. "These numbers are completely unacceptable, Director Han." The voice came from the far end of the table. Director Kim, ringleader of what Siwoo called the Bold Guard, slammed a report down hard enough to make the water glasses tremble. "Ever since your father passed, the stock's down 12%. Shareholders are spooked. They don't trust some kid to run an empire." Siwoo didn't move. His face stayed perfectly bored, but Nia caught the way his knuckles went white around his fountain pen. "Markets fluctuate, Director Kim," Siwoo said, voice smooth as ice. "Restructuring takes time. We're cutting out the illegal crap my father built his empire on. It's a correction. A necessary one. It's a goddamn disaster." Kim shot to his feet. "We need stability. That's why the board has decided, unanimously, to move forward with the Choi Industries merger. You marry their eldest daughter, secure the alliance, and save this company." "I already told you," Siwoo said, his voice going dangerously quiet. "I'm not marrying into that family. Their assets are poison. You don't have a choice." Kim's sneer was ugly. "Unless you've got a magic solution for the 40 billion won hole we're staring down, you'll do what you're told. Or should we take a vote right now to remove you as CEO?" The room went dead silent. The threat sat there between them like a loaded gun. Siwoo opened his mouth, then stopped. He didn't have the votes. He was trapped. Nia saw it, that split second of panic in his eyes. The same panic she'd seen when his father called. She didn't plan it. She just acted. Actually, Nia's voice sliced through the tension. Every head whipped toward her. Siwoo went rigid, his eyes screaming, "What the hell are you doing?" She ignored him completely. She stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked over to grab the merger documents off the table. Right now, she wasn't playing the fake fiancée. She was the auditor. "Director Kim," she said, flipping to page 42. "You're saying the Choi merger saves the company. But according to these financials, Choi Industries is leveraging their debt through offshore shell companies in the Caymans. They're not liquid. They're broke." Kim's face went from red to purple. "Who the hell is this woman?" "Siwoo, control your—" "I'm not done," Nia cut him off, her voice like steel. She tossed the file back on the table. "If you merge with them, you're not buying assets. You're buying 300 million in hidden debt. The SEC would be crawling up our ass within a week, and the stock wouldn't just drop, it'd be worthless." She planted her hands on the table and stared Kim down. "Siwoo's not refusing this marriage because he's being difficult. He's refusing it because he's the only person in this room smart enough to see that the Choi family wants us to bail them out." Dead silence. Then the scrambling started, board members frantically flipping through their copies, whispering, recalculating. The whole dynamic flipped. Suddenly the hunters realized they'd walked into someone else's trap. Siwoo looked up at Nia. For the first time since they'd met, there was no smugness in his expression. No coldness. He looked genuinely shocked. And maybe, just maybe, impressed. "Director Kim," Siwoo said, leaning back with a slow, dangerous smile creeping across his face. "Looks like my fiancé's better with numbers than you are. Next time you try to sell out my company, maybe double-check your math first." The heavy door of the limousine clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the city. The interior was quiet, smelling of leather and tension. Nia let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for an hour, slumping slightly against the seat. Her hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. Siwoo didn't speak immediately. He watched the city blur past the tinted windows, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned to look at her. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. His voice wasn't the command of a master anymore, it was softer, laced with genuine curiosity. "That report on the Choi debt, that wasn't in the files I gave you." "I extrapolated it," Nia said, straightening her blazer. "I saw the interest ratios in the footnotes. It's what I do, Siwoo. I find the lies people try to hide in the numbers." Siwoo stared at her for a long moment. Then, he shifted closer. The leather seat creaked. The space between them, usually cold and vast, suddenly felt charged with electricity. "You saved me in there," he murmured. "They were ready to tear me apart." "I didn't do it for you," Nia said, though her voice wavered slightly as he leaned in. "I did it because if you get fired, the deal is off, and my sister isn't safe." "Is that the only reason?" He reached out. His fingers, warm and hesitant, brushed a loose curl away from her forehead. His touch lingered on her skin, tracing the line of her jaw. Nia's breath hitched. She looked up at him, and for a second, she didn't see the viper. She saw a man who was lonely, tired, and carrying the weight of a collapsing empire on his shoulders. His eyes dropped to her lips. The air in the car grew thick. He leaned in closer, his scent enveloping her. Nia didn't pull away. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a traitorous rhythm. She wanted him to close the gap. But just as their lips were a breath apart, Siwoo froze. A shadow passed over his face. The vulnerability vanished, slammed shut behind a wall of ice. He pulled his hand back as if he had been burned. He straightened his tie, turning his head away to look out the window again. His profile was sharp and cruel. "Don't mistake your role, Nia," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "You are an employee. You are a tool I used to win a meeting. Do not think you matter to me." Nia felt the words like a physical slap. The rejection stung more than she expected. She turned away, staring out her own window, blinking back the sudden burn of tears. "I know my role," she whispered to the glass. "Do you know yours? Or are you just going to be exactly what your father made you?" Siwoo didn't answer. But in the reflection of the window, she saw him close his eyes, a look of profound pain crossing his face before the mask slipped back into place. "Do you think Siwoo is fighting his feelings, or is he just using her?" Comment Viper if you think he is already obsessed but scared to admit it. The penthouse was steeped in shadows, the only sound the rhythmic drumming of rain against the floor-to-ceiling glass and the distant hiss of the shower running in the master bathroom. Nia lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the moment in the car, the almost kiss, and the cold rejection that followed. Don't mistake your role. She sat up, frustration burning in her chest. If she was just an employee, she would act like one. She was here to find dirt, and she wasn't leaving until she knew exactly who Han Siwoo really was. She slipped out of bed, moving silently across the dark hallway into the living room. Her eyes went to the large, grotesque oil painting hanging above the fireplace. It was the only piece of art in the house that didn't match the decor. It was ugly, violent, and red. If I were a paranoid narcissist, Nia whispered to herself, that's where I'd hide my heart. She checked the bathroom door. The water was still running. She had 5 minutes. Nia climbed onto the marble hearth and ran her fingers along the frame. There was no latch this time. It was magnetic. She pulled a hairpin from her pocket, sliding it between the canvas and the wall, disrupting the seal. The painting swung forward. Behind it sat a heavy, biometric safe. But Nia had already lifted Siwoo's fingerprints from a Scotch glass earlier that evening using a piece of tape. It was a crude trick, but effective. She pressed the tape to the scanner. Beep. Click. The door swung open. Inside, there was no cash, no gold bars. Just a single, battered notebook and a hard drive. Nia grabbed the notebook and flipped it open. She expected to find records of Siwoo's embezzlement, his drug deals, and his crimes. Instead, she found a demolition plan. Project Zero, liquidation of Han assets. Exposure of board member Kim. Destruction of supply lines. Nia froze. She flipped through the pages. This wasn't a business plan. It was a suicide note for the company. He's not running the empire, Nia whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. He's killing it. Han Siwoo wasn't trying to save his inheritance. He was trying to burn the corrupt company his father built to the ground, even if it meant destroying himself. Suddenly, the sound of running water stopped. Nia slammed the notebook shut, but it was too late to put it back. The bathroom door opened. Steam billowed out into the cold room, and Siwoo stepped out, a white towel wrapped low around his hips. He didn't see her at first. He was drying his hair with another towel, his back turned to her. Nia's breath caught in her throat. She dropped the notebook. Siwoo's back was a map of agony. Thick, raised keloid scars crisscrossed his skin, old, brutal lash marks that looked like they had been carved by a belt or a whip. They were the kind of scars that came from years of systematic torture by a dead man. Siwoo turned around, sensing her presence. He froze. His eyes went from Nia's face to the open safe, and then to the notebook lying on the floor. The color drained from his face. For a second, he looked terrified. Then, the walls slammed back up. His expression hardened into lethal ice. "You shouldn't have seen that," he whispered, his voice trembling with a dangerous mix of rage and shame. "You're trying to destroy the company," Nia said, stepping over the notebook. She looked at the scars on his chest. "You want to end the legacy. My father built this empire on blood," Siwoo snarled, stepping toward her. "The board thinks they can keep it running. I'm going to release that evidence and burn the whole damn thing down." "And what happens to you when it burns?" Nia asked softly. Siwoo stopped. He looked at her with hollow eyes. "I burn with it." The fragile silence between them shattered, not with a word, but with a scream. A piercing, discordant alarm blasted through the penthouse, and the soothing ambient lighting turned into a strobing, blood-red warning. Security breach. Sector 4. Siwoo didn't flinch. The vulnerability he had shown just seconds ago evaporated, replaced instantly by the cold, tactical efficiency of a soldier. He grabbed a handgun from under the coffee table and tossed a sleek black tablet to Nia. "They're here," he said, his voice flat. "My father's cleaners. They aren't here to arrest me. They're here to erase me." "Sector 4 is the balcony," Nia said, her fingers flying across the tablet screen as she accessed the building's mainframe. "They're rappelling down from the roof." "Lock the elevators," Siwoo commanded, racking the slide of his weapon. "And kill the lights. I need darkness." Nia tapped a command, and the penthouse plunged into pitch blackness. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the silhouette of a man crashing through the floor-to-ceiling window. Glass exploded inward like shrapnel. Siwoo moved. He fired 2 controlled shots. The intruder dropped. But another shadow swung in behind him, and then a third. "Get to the panic room." Siwoo roared, shoving Nia toward the hallway. "Not without you," she yelled back. A red laser dot danced across the room, sweeping over the furniture, hunting. It settled on Nia's chest. Siwoo didn't hesitate. He didn't shout a warning. He simply threw his body across the space between them. He tackled her to the ground just as the deafening crack of a sniper rifle echoed through the room. Nia hit the floor hard, Siwoo's heavy weight crushing the air out of her lungs. But she heard the sickening, wet sound of the bullet impact. Siwoo grunted, a harsh, guttural sound of pain, and his body jerked violently against hers. "Siwoo," she screamed. "Go," he gasped, dragging himself up with grit-teeth determination. He fired blindly into the darkness to provide cover, grabbing her arm with his good hand. "Move." They scrambled down the hallway, bullets chewing up the drywall around them, until they reached the heavy steel door of the panic room. Siwoo punched in a code, and the door hissed shut, sealing them inside a concrete box of safety. Siwoo slid down the wall, leaving a streak of dark blood on the gray paint. He slumped to the floor, dropping the gun. "You're hit," Nia said, her voice trembling as she fell to her knees beside him. "Through and through," he wheezed, his face pale and slick with sweat. "Shoulder. Missed the artery." "Shut up," Nia ordered, her hands shaking as she ripped open his blood-soaked shirt. The sight was gruesome, a jagged hole in his shoulder, bleeding sluggishly over the old scars on his chest. She grabbed the emergency medical kit from the wall. There was no time for modesty or boundaries now. She pressed a gauze pad hard against the wound. Siwoo cried out, his head falling back against the wall, his hand gripping her wrist tightly. "Damn it," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Breathe," Nia commanded, applying more pressure. Her hands were stained with his blood. The heat of him was overwhelming. "Focus on me, Siwoo." Just breathe. His grip on her wrist loosened, but he didn't let go. He opened his eyes, hazy with pain, and looked at her. He looked at the blood on her hands, then up at her face, which was streaked with tears. She hadn't realized she was crying. You had the code, he whispered hoarsely. You could have run when the lights went out. Why are you still here? Nia froze, her eyes locking with his. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the raw, terrifying truth exposed between them. Because, Nia whispered, pressing a clean bandage to his skin, I'm not done saving you yet. The service elevator dumped them in the alley behind the building, all damp concrete and scattered trash. Nia didn't ask questions. She shoved Si-woo into the passenger seat of a delivery van she'd already hotwired and floored it until Gangnam's glass towers disappeared behind them. No hotels. Too risky. They ended up at some condemned shipping warehouse outside Incheon that reeked of rust and rotting fish. Si-woo said it was off the board surveillance grid. Nia hoped to God he was right. She kicked the door shut behind them. Si-woo stumbled to a crate and collapsed, his face the color of old newspaper. His breathing came in short, painful gasps. The bandage on his shoulder was completely soaked through. You're bleeding out, Nia said, kneeling beside him. Her hands shook as she tore a strip from her own shirt and wound it around him, pulling it tight. Si-woo groaned. His good hand reached out and grabbed her wrist, smearing blood across her skin. His grip was desperate, like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Why didn't you just leave me? His voice was barely there. Because I don't abandon people, she shot back, yanking the knot tight. Even arrogant assholes who kidnapped me. That got a weak laugh out of him, though it dissolved into coughing. When he looked at her again, something had changed in his eyes. The cold, calculated viper was gone. What was left was just a man who didn't want to die alone. I lied to you, he whispered. She froze. About what? The contract. His thumb brushed against her pulse. I didn't keep you around because I needed protection. I could have hired anyone for that. He swallowed hard, meeting her eyes with an honesty that hit like a gut punch. I kept you because when you walked into my office that night, you were the only real thing in that entire building. Nia's heart stuttered. She couldn't look away. For once, he wasn't performing. Si-woo. The sirens cut her off. She scrambled to the window. Black SUVs ringed the warehouse. The board, Si-woo said flatly. Director Kim's cleanup crew. They're not here to arrest me. He pulled himself upright with a grunt, reached into his waistband, and produced the gun, the same one he'd used to save her in the penthouse. He checked the magazine. One left. He held it out to her, handle first. What are you doing? She asked. They want the evidence and me dead. But they don't know about you. His eyes burned into hers. Walk out there right now, hands up, tell them I took you hostage, they might let you go. He pushed the gun into her hand. Give me up, Nia. You walk away. You survive. His voice dropped. Or you stay, and we both die here. The sirens screamed closer. Boots crunched on gravel. Voices shouted orders outside. Nia stared at the gun in her hand. Heavy. Cold. She looked at the door. Then back at Si-woo, the monster, the victim, the man who'd taken a bullet for her. She didn't say anything. Just turned toward the rusted iron door. Click-clack. She cocked the gun, raised it level, and set her feet. She wasn't going anywhere. So, did Nia just make the stupidest decision of her life, or the bravest? They're outgunned, trapped, and Si-woo's running out of time. The Viper and the Spy have one night to make it out alive against an entire army. Don't miss part 2 where we find out if they actually make it through the night. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next.